Welcome to Expedition Self on OMTimes Radio with lifelong learner, entrepreneur, and creator of the worlds of Expedition Self, Sam Parrotto. Sam shares 4 decades of studying, guiding, and teaching how to go inside so we can build an incredibly powerful, dynamic, and validating relationship with the self. Expedition Self is laced with stellar, unexpected insights about what it means to be human. Listen now and ignite your self-development process with Sam Parrotto.
Well, welcome to Expedition Self. I am Sam Parrotto and I am in the flesh. I'm live and we are going to talk about the magic of creative visualizations today. That is a very long word. I had to type it when I was doing my notes. I thought, oh my gosh, this is a lot. This is a mouthful. Anyway, it's such a fun, fantasy-filled, kind of otherworldly opportunity to open up the pathway between your unconscious, your subconscious, and your conscious self. Oh, gosh. So before I get started, I was really excited. I received a question on my website last week from Teresa, and she asked, what does love look like? Well, if that's not a giant, big, like humongous question, I don't know what is. So I'm going to give this one a shot, and I hope, Teresa, that you're listening. So love is anything and everything that is in existence in every moment of your everyday life. Right? Love, to me, is the state of being here. But what makes this question a little tricky is posing it as, what does love look like, right? And so in that, I don't think a lot of the things that are part of life always look like love. And this is what makes it such a very deeply personal question to ponder, more than I would have an answer, right? So certainly we know what feels loving to us, but sometimes things don't feel loving, but they actually are. Or sometimes love looks like the opposite of the thing we think we want. Sometimes someone seems like they're super loving, but when you look a bit deeper, you notice that what they're being loving about has strings attached or conditions that make it confining or binding. Sometimes when our heart closes, we imagine we don't love that person or situation anymore. But really, it's a byproduct of having gotten hurt or disappointed or disillusioned. And that's what's really interfering with that love frequency. So I guess, Teresa, since I'm answering your question right out of the box today, I'd have to say you want to look beyond what looks like love and explore what's beneath it and what needs get met and what dynamics are in play and whether or not it truly empowers you. And then you'd want to look beyond what doesn't look like love and do the same. How might it actually serve you? Is the situation calling you forward in some way in your life? Helping to illuminate a blind spot, or are you projecting some idea or reaction onto the situation that causes it to seem a certain way? So, in summary, I guess whatever love looks like, if we take the case that every aspect of life is love, well then you'll always want to take an inventory of those moments that both feel like love and don't feel like love, and really, really dive into and investigate them and feel around, for the places where you can actually learn about love, because that's the goal. So, Teresa, I'm going to send you an email in response to your question with everything that I generally just said. And I want to invite anyone who is listening to go to my website, samparrotto.com, and become a follower of the show. Feel free to write me, actually anything you want, at hello@expeditionself.com. Yes, I get all the emails. I'm the only one who sees them, and I love to connect about your thoughts on all kinds of growth stuff. I also want to remind you all today, this is a call-in show, and if ever there was a show to call in and share some story or personal experience that was moving and radically impactful for you, boy, today would be the day to do it. It's 202-570-7057. On a quieter note, my BFF's mom transitioned out of this lifetime this week. And I'd like to ask all of you to help me send Rita love and peace and learning as she moves into the next phase of her soul's journey. She touched all of our lives and brought so much care and love and joy. We miss her. And I know Susie misses her more than anything. So thank you for this moment and allowing me to share our loss with you. We also saw, I can never say his name right, but I'm going to try, Thich Nhat Hanh. We saw him move into his next phase of being. And boy, what a lifetime he led. If any of you don't know who he is, I'll put a link on my site so you can go and check out his work. I think almost every sentence that human being uttered was emblazoned, right, with spiritual delight and wisdom. And I have just a few quotes right now, but at the end, instead of reading poetry, I'm going to share some quotes if we have time. So the first one that I really love is, walk as if you are kissing the earth with your feet. And if any of you know me well, I love feet and I love the idea of feet, and I just feel like they're so underappreciated. So that one really fit. Here's another one. When another person makes you suffer, it is because he or she suffers deeply within himself, and his suffering is spilling over. And I guess the last one, just to kick us off to this next part of our show and talking about creative visualization, is sometimes your joy is the source of your smile, but sometimes your smile can be the source of your joy. I actually really believe that. I think smiling is kind of like ringing the doorbell to the self. It's like, I'll smile as the opening and then we'll see what happens. So I really love that one. All right. So let's dive into our subject today, creative visualization and guided imagery or guided meditation. We're going to talk about it, and I'm going to share a few of my stories. And, you know, I like to go inside, so I'm sure it makes tons of sense why I would want to do a show about creative visualization, right? So what I thought was my first experience with creative visualization was with Shakti Gawain, who wrote a book in the 70s about the benefits of it. But I also was brought into it by my teacher at the time, Sandy Brown, and she guided me through my first personal ones that were kind of customized to me. Of course, then as I went to conferences throughout each decade, I'm dating myself here, the New Age conferences were always guiding us through some visualization, you know, using imagery to help open up some new like connection to self or possibility. But nowadays, they're using this method of making contact in every corner and niche, like out there, you know, whether it's how to make more money or whether it's in the, you know, personal physical fitness world or whether it's in business. I mean, it's really everywhere. And I have personally led meditations in my business spaces to give people a chance to go inside. So I guess Shakti was right. You know, it's a hugely important and dependable tool for making contact, you know, with the inner self. So let's start by really calling out what it does when you engage in any form of creative visualization or guided imagery. By the way, have you ever noticed how meditation only has one extra letter, or it would be mediation? I don't know, I just was noticing that. I wonder if that's like an intention, right? Because, you know, when I think of any kind of self-revealing meditation, I think of it as a sort of mediation between the conscious and the unconscious, or the outer and the inner. Well, anyway, I love it when words seem to tell a story of their own, even without us having to blend, you know, the meanings. Okay, back to this idea. All right. So yes, it uses your imagination, right? It totally invites you to bring your imagery into a more clear picture, but it also has you connect your mind with your body. And it makes room, like opens up the space for emotions. So there's this integrative quality that happens utilizing this visualization as the meeting space in the middle. And when you think about it, there are very few opportunities to do this in our lives. If we're working on a writing exercise, for most, they're not generally paying attention to their body unless they get a pain or a crook in their neck, Or if you're in a yoga class, you're not generally looking for the feeling emotional stuff to come up, right? I mean, it might, but it's not something you're wanting to include. So this is the hidden genius of creative visualization. It creates a place in time when you are able to integrate the mind, body, emotion, and of course the soul, spiritual is present then too. And because of the guided nature of it, there's this language that you are willing to let through in a way that you might not at any other time. And this language isn't really words and definitions, and being precise. I talk a lot about this when I'm describing the 5 layers of the self, how each layer has a different way of communicating, a different language really. And because of that, lots of us miss all that information that's actually being offered up to us all the time, right? It just goes by, right? Without us recognizing it for what it is, because it doesn't come through in our primary way of communicating with ourselves. So creative visualization actually sets the language at body awareness of breath and sensory recognition, imagery that can be interpreted in more than one way, helping the mind to give over to the non-defined, which then opens the space for the emotions to make themselves known. And all of this is done by giving over the need to make everything so tangible that you must be absolutely sure what something means. So this suspended conclusion is an essential part of this idea of going inside with an exercise of creative visualization. So I just want to say it a little more succinctly here. I think it's basically that creative visualization, it places you on a different floor or a different vibration in a different set of words and ideas so that they can be absorbed in a way that when you're not in creative visualization, you just can't do. So this is another thing I just love about life, right? Is how we can embark on an activity that looks like it's going to do one thing for us, but really it's going to do something bigger, greater, and deeper than we could possibly understand. And that's exactly how I see creative visualization. Okay, so let's see. Some use creative visualization for manifestation, right? I read that Jim Carrey wrote a check to himself for $10 million every day for 3 years until he made the movie Dumb and Dumber and actually got a check for $10 million. See, the writing of that check is a form of creative visualization. You think about what you're wanting and you send more and more energy and thought towards it. And then somewhere things start to shift and move and find like new expression. I'm not sure whether the writing of the check helps the mind get more focused on what it wants, and then, the choices that someone makes that follow, are different, or if it's also a way to engage the universe in your wish and want, in a powerful way, super powerful way, and then synchronicity starts happening and things start moving in a direction, right, that provides this maximum benefit. I think, scientifically, right, I think there's a whole lot out there that talks about what we don't control that's actually happening all the time. This is even the idea of these vision boards that people are doing, where you cut out all these magazine pieces and you place them on a board and you put words on them, and you're really putting yourself into your future or into what it is that you're wanting to create, right? That is definitely a form of creative visualization. And I think there's a lot out there Like you can Google it and find all kinds of help with that. So another form of creative visualization is the kind that's related more to meditation, like a way to quiet the mind, to focus the mind, to get more centered or slow down and find peace and sleep, right? Deal with anxiety, which is a biggie, right? All the stuff of life that's buzzing around all the time. And of course, by engaging it, then we're able to master the bzz, 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 rather than being chased, and pushed around by it. I think this is a good spot for us to go to break. And when we come back, I just want to talk a little bit about thought patterns and all that buzzing. So when we come back.
A conscious lifestyle for a mindful life. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
OMTimes magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organisation, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. Connect at omtimes.com. OMTimes, creating a more conscious lifestyle.
My name is Victor Furman. Some call me The Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio, and we'll explore these topics and so much more on Destination Unlimited.
COVID-19, brought to you by CDC and the Ad Council.
If you're feeling increasingly lonely right now, you're not alone. It's totally normal. Even though we may not be able to get together in person, connecting virtually with friends and family still gives you a chance to interact with people and may help raise your spirits. Join a virtual book club, set up group text chats, or online video coffee breaks with coworkers.
Find more self-care and coping tips at coping-19.org.
Okay, we're back. I'm Sam Parrotto. You are listening to Expedition Self, and we're talking about creative visualization and guided imagery and meditation today. And before we went on break, I wanted to mention this idea of how we're victimized by our thought routines and patterns. The thought and shoulds and personal ideology, they like to think that they're the leaders of our psyche, of how it goes, the true authority figures in our lives, and they get away with it a lot. So when we engage in this process of meditation and visualization, we're helping to level that playing field for the rest of the self. We're opening up a hallway for other aspects, to get through. It's not just that you're developing a new language to make contact with those other parts of yourself. You're also actually pushing the mind over and asking it to take a rest from telling you what to do all the time and telling you how you did it and telling you what it didn't like that you did and telling you how you could make it better and constantly picking you apart. And that's the thing. We really can't claim more of ourselves from the realm of the mind. It's just too rigid and linear and locked in. Even if your mind is a creative one, if you consider yourself an artist type, the mind on its own just doesn't provide a constantly open archway for the rest of the self to enter and leave and exchange information. So this creative visualization, we can use it to manifest. We can use it to deal with the pressure and anxiety of life. We can use it to train the mind to open up to more of the self. This is a lot in and of itself, right? I mean, it's so much. Like, we should be doing this all the time. As I was preparing for today's show, I landed on David Lynch, the film director, video that he did, and he shared a ton about the value of meditation. He describes it like this. He says that if you have a golf ball size of self-awareness, then when you read a book, you'll have a golf ball size of comprehension, which is kind of like if you have that kind of self-awareness and it's not growing, then that's how you'll continue to relate to life, right? But when you can expand it, right? Everything that I've already talked about why it's meaningful to do this creative visualization. Well, there's this added payoff that has to do with growing your golf ball, right? Which means you'll be able to understand more about you and life because of it. And this new consciousness that awaits, it's directly related to how you will live, how you will love, and how you will put yourself at the very source of creating the entire life that you want. And helping others do the same, right? There's always that added little hook on the end. So the other thing that I think creative visualization does is that it speaks to the creative center. So you know how people are always talking about being right-brained or left-brained or whole-brained if you're one of those brilliant, lucky people. But I believe that the creative center, which I don't affiliate with the right-brain people that are normally considered creative, it brings the whole self together in a very kind of growing edge kind of way. And what I mean by this is that by working in the creative center, a place where you have no idea what the outcome will be, where you can't really plot the direction, where you give over the mind and the body and everything to the moment and the breath in the now. When you do this, you are on a growing edge within the self. And this creative center is an invisible bridge between the two parts of the brain. So when they talk about being whole-brained, well, it definitely helps to build that bridge, that linkage each and every time you go there. So without climbing a mountain or surfing off the coast of Australia with the sharks, you're actually on your own growing edge. And this means that there's an experiential element to it. And when something is truly experiential, you're growing yourself at a cellular level. You're altering your current DNA in some way. And no, I can't prove that scientifically because I'm not a scientist, but I can tell you that you are definitely helping yourself to evolve as a human being. I just think this is the best magic medicine we can give ourselves. Creative visualization does all of that. Yep, all of that. Now, I'm thinking that some of you have actually done it and you're over there nodding your head. So I'd love to hear from anyone who has done guided meditation or creative visualization. What did you see as the benefit for you? What happened for you? And did you experience this evolution that I'm talking about? Okay. Let's see. Let me give you the phone number one more time, just in case you need it. 202-570-7057. Now let's talk about the parts of a visualization. Now I'm going to actually read this as if we're in one. All right? There's the coming into the body following the breath. Okay, I'm going to put it into words and feel free to follow along just for this little excerpt. Settle in, and then we'll talk about what it's all about when I'm done. If you call in this moment, I'll get you as soon as I'm through reading this. All right, here we go. You'll want to come into your body right now. Find a comfortable place to rest. Allow your surroundings to melt away and begin to focus on your breath. Feel the breath move in and out of your lungs, through your nose and down your throat. Slow your breathing as we breathe in for 1, 2, 3, 4, and out 2, 3, 4. Feel the breath as it leaves and returns through your nostrils. Notice the way the lungs expand to contain each breath, and then how they release, allowing the muscles to relax. And as you notice each breath coming and going, begin to allow the tightness in your body to ride on those out-breaths, feeling the weight lifting with each wave of breath. Now, let your consciousness spread throughout the other parts of your body, inviting each breath to spread further and further through your shoulders, over the bottoms of your arms, and to your fingers, across your shoulder blades, down your spine, behind your belly button, and into your hips, your lower abdomen, and into your sits bones. With each breath, feel it spread through and around your head, feeling each plate of your skull soften and settle, noticing how it moves through your legs, the backs of your thighs, the insides of your kneecaps, over your calves, your heels, and then into the archways in your feet until your toes are able to wiggle, knowing that they are part of your whole body, sitting in the moment, allowing yourself to just be. Now, I moved through that a little fast, but pretty much every creative visualization starts with some invitation to come into the body, right? With making contact with the micro parts so they all get included and acknowledged. So you bring a new level of awareness to this contact. If you listen to people lead these, over time you'll notice which descriptions seem to bring you the most connection to your body and yourself, which ones you like. And as you create your own visualization, you can use those and write them out so they become the way you begin your journey. Yes, I'm definitely suggesting that you will want to create your own creative visualization, the one that helps you summon your inner habitat, your safe place, the domain where you can get information and assistance. You can also listen to others for sure, because there's so many out there now. You have a lot to choose from. I just think it's so important to be able to return over and over again to your inner habitat. And the best way to do that is to have a creative visualization that is in your voice, that takes you to the place you created and will recognize. And, I recently, Catherine Costa she leads workshops and then she does meditations. I love hers. They always have this kind of otherworldly, magical energy kind of feel about them. And I think that's what you'll find as you go out there and look, is you'll find people that you resonate with their voice, you like how they set up your connection with your body. They put topics on them that are something you actually want to delve more deeply into. So really, it's so important that you listen to others and then begin to form your own. So I would like to tell you a little bit about my habitat, since we don't have a caller yet. And I have more than one at this point, but my first habitat was guided by Sandy Brown for me. And we walked across a beautiful meadow on a blue sky-filled day with billowy white clouds and a gentle breeze. Hear the breeze. The ocean was off in the distance. That's a wave crashing. So the scent in the air felt calming and fresh. And as I walked across this meadow, I would let the thoughts of my worries or the dilemma I was in or my self-judgments, which ran rampant back then, just kind of get left behind with each step. And finally, after walking for a while, I came to the edge of a forest. And there was a pathway into that forest where I was to enter. So as I entered, although it was 2:00 or so in the afternoon and the sun was up, it was darker, right? The symbology there was important. The trees were closer together. I could hear the animals in the forest talking among themselves, letting each other know that I was there. And then as I walked for a while, I didn't rush through that walk, I climbed into a canoe and I began to paddle downstream. So again, notice the significance of downstream. And then as I did that, I arrived at a little clearing area where the water was circling around, a small pool forming where I could stop and get out of my canoe. There was no rush here. I had plenty of time to just be with each step of this guided meditation. So over to the side were some logs and a center area where a fire clearly had burned before. And so I made my way to that space and noticed that the logs were in a kind of triangular formation and with large openings for anyone to come in and seat themselves around this fire. I was then invited to welcome anyone who wanted to appear. An inner child, an animal that had a message for me, an ancestor or a guide who wished to show up, really, or anyone that I wanted to make contact with. And I did. On the first visit, me as a 5-year-old appeared, and I was very, very sad. I felt abandoned, and I didn't have a lot to say because all I did was cry. And so I was new to this, so I really didn't have any idea what to do. So I just sat there and I looked at her while she cried, and I tried to, send my love and open my heart. And when that happened, this big, black, cuddly, very strong-looking bear came out of the woods, kind of made his way over, lumbered over, and literally just curled up next to her. And when he did, she curled up on the bear, and her crying seemed to lessen. And in the middle of this, I was able to ask her why she was so sad, even though I kind of had a sense since I was once her. And when I did, she said, and what I loved about this is it was in a very, didn't sound like me, as a 23-year-old. She said, it's not going very well. I'm lonely. I'm not happy. And I got to tell you, I completely cried in that moment. The emotions, her emotions, mine, they allowed me to connect with my suffering or pain in that, about her experience, but from the place that I was. It was super, super powerful because I was able to see it more clearly through her image in this visualization. And I was able to pull some of the sadness that I was feeling in my everyday life out and connect it with her directly. Oh, I forgot to tell you, I did light that fire. Again, fire being so symbolic, right, of opening something up in purification and, igniting something before she appeared. So when she left with the bear, I put the fire out and I made sure the camp was the way I found it. I climbed in my canoe and then I began to paddle back upriver. Again, notice the importance of the symbolism, right? I walked back through the forest, over the meadow, and it was later in the day, so I could actually feel the chill in the air as I made my way back to my starting point. The symbolism in this, experience that I had, you have to remember that we are all storytellers. We're all moved by story. So it does really open something up when that kind of detail is provided through someone else's words to help you go into yourself deeper and deeper and open to listening to parts of the self that you might not normally hear. So this was super meaningful for me. I mean, I'm sure you can, as you're listening, you can get that, right? I was this being able to see through the lens of my 5-year-old rather than my inner 5-year-old being overlooked. It made such a difference. And I realized that I was looking for other people to take care of her needs, to make her not feel lonely. But I wasn't willing to do it. I didn't even realize I was not doing it. I think this was my first understanding of having needs. You might be saying at 23, but yeah, that's kind of how it went. And how unconsciously I was looking for others to take care of them. I didn't realize I was supposed to be doing that. That pass-through that we do when the inside self is wanting and longing, and then we don't realize that we're capable of meeting that need. It's an incredibly important part of becoming self-empowering. So let's talk about this for just a minute more. A great creative visualization uses symbolism to help open up the unconscious self. So the elements like fire and rock and water and trees, all of that nature is part of the parallel experience that creates imagery that the psyche can relate to but doesn't have to pin down. So the idea of water in the psyche is often emotion, or that darkness in the forest represented like me going into a place within that I hadn't actually discovered yet. Now, again, you always get to check out what it means to you. I'm just giving you some general ideas. Another part of creative visualization is that any being, any totem, any character, even the made up ones, are considered valuable characters to the moment. So in this world, the fantastical is welcome and believable, right? Because it's a story that's being provided for you by your unconscious self. So it's make-believe in a sense, but at the same time, it's pointing to something that isn't make-believe because it lives inside of you and is needing a way to be understood and ultimately communicated with. I'm going to stop here. I'd love to hear you call in and share a bit about your creative visualizations, or if you have questions, but how they went, what you noticed, where you went, really anything. And so when we come back from break.
The best of holistic, spiritual, and conscious world. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Ascending Hearts is no ordinary dating site, but a spiritual dating site with a purpose, to link you with your soulmate. We engineer the serendipity so you can trust that you will attune with someone that has the same matching vibration as you. Ascending Hearts, the conscious dating site for the spiritually aware. Try Ascending Hearts for free. ascendinghearts.com.
Imagine yourself being transported to India, to the banks of the Ganga and an ashram in Rishikesh. Visualize that you are welcome to satsang with an American sannyasi who shares the wisdom of her guru. Your visualization has manifested. Join Sattvi Bhagawati Saraswati for inspiration and transformation every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio.
If I could be you,
and you could be me,
for just 1 hour,
if you could find a way
to get inside
each other's mind,
walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
We've all felt left out. And for some, that feeling lasts more than a moment. We can change that. Learn how at belongingbeginswithus.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
All right, well, we are back on Expedition Self, and I'm Sam Parrotto. We are talking about creative visualization and guided meditation today. And just before we went on break, I was sharing a little bit about one of the personal habitats that was really the first one I ever found. And I just want to share with you that, it became one that I returned to many times. I met many players in my life. I invited members of my family to show up. Me at many ages, other animals showed up. Once I had a frog show up. He told me I was way too serious about things, and I was weighing down my 5-year-old. And no, he didn't talk in frog. I did understand him, and they always came at times where that was the message that I actually needed, or that was the thing to add to my world so that I could, go to the next step. So, what happened is I now had a place where I could learn how to talk to myself and listen. And then, of course, sometimes I would hear drumming off in the distance. Sometimes I would be aware of others in the trees, and I'd invite them in and they would say, "No, we're not coming." See, the key was I started to also learn how to go with it, to give myself over and trust myself, trust my imagination and my intuition, and to deeply open to what showed up. That's an important part of life. That's an important part of how we expand and become more of who we're capable of being, is that self-trust. And I really believe that that happened inside of all my creative visualization I did over the years. After I would do like go inside on one of these, I would journal, right? A lot of times I would develop questions while I was in the visualization. So I'd come out and write those questions down. Why didn't I ever tell anyone how lonely I was, or what was really going on at that time in my life? So journaling, going for a walk, anything that allows that visualization to sink deeper in is helpful. And you always want to watch your dreams and the things that are happening around you after you've done this work, because they'll show you other things that got released through that unconscious window when you went on the journey. Creative visualization, it's a great tool for going into a dream also. You can enter physically, just the way I started earlier, at the side of an edge of something, and with the focus on the breath and the body, and then you just go back to what you're aware of in that dream. Those recurring dreams you have all the time, you can go right into the center of those and you can ask questions. Why am I always dreaming about you? What is it that I'm supposed to understand now? Right? The key is to take what's offered and not give yourself a hard time for what isn't, because the minute you start critiquing your visualization, it'll tend to dry up, and you'll get better and better at it, as you practice. So it's kind of one of those things. If you go into the first 5 of them and you don't see anything but a rock, well, that's what you were supposed to get. That's what you want to work with, because the minute you start like spitting back and saying, I didn't want that rock, is the minute you're that middle center creative bridge I was talking about, it closes up, and then the rest of your psyche also closes up, because you kind of make it not safe for yourself, right? I want to share another one that happened as I found myself creating a new inner habitat years later. This one was on the side of a mountain, and the first thing I saw was this giant cave, and to the left of the cave was this multicolored, like a bunch of buttons filled, looked futuristic, like a panel off of Star Trek, when they move from one room to another. And the cave was white rock, lots of big, big ones, all, stacked on top of each other with sharp edges, kind of pointy, right? And it wasn't really accessible, like, kind of ominous. And I could only see the outside. I couldn't really go in. So even though I describe it as a cave, there was this natural rock that actually blocked my going inside. So I made my way up to the front of it, and I pressed one of the buttons on the panel, and this rock cave door slid open. And as I walked down inside this cave, there were these alcoves and rooms that branched off of the side of the pathway. So I took one. I found myself in the middle of a battle, I want to say a couple hundred years ago. And I was a woman and was in this village, and I was fighting. I had a pitchfork in my hand. I was spearing at people that were trying to get me. And these men on horses had torches in their hand. And I'm like, okay, I don't even know what just happened here. And I watched myself a bit longer, and I asked, why am I here? What is going on? And the only thing that showed up was, your pain lives here. So sometimes you only get one sentence or a phrase or a word. The thing about this moment, the way it processed for me, was that the panel, when I hit a button, it takes me into another world. Or if you believe in other lifetimes, another lifetime. However you want to think about it. And it helped me connect the present experience, or what I was working on in my growth process, with what's happening inside of my psyche, or has happened. So to me, it didn't really matter whether it really happened or not, because what the visual did is take me directly to this firsthand emotional experience, that I'm having trouble sorting out in my real life at that time. And it focused me on where there was to heal or work with it. These inner habitats, they become the place you get help. Help when you're stuck, help when you want to understand your circumstances better, help when you're trying to get someplace. I now call this my cave of lifetimes, and it's surrounded by a big hill. And there's a well that has faces that appear and talk to me, and a huge garden with overgrown sunflowers and a giant pink quartz rock that I sit on and journal. If I have time at the end of this, I'll share that story about that rock I call the grandmother's rock. There's a red cabin with a bear that runs around down below, always has smoke coming out of the chimney. And I think I might have figured out who lives in that cabin recently, but I'll save that for another show. It rests on the side of the river, and there's a copse of trees across the rise of the hill that showed up when my son was born. And each year I find it has more trees. I hope that made some sense, because I have this visual in my mind that I go back to over and over, and I know it is my sacred inner habitat, and I have drawn it, and right, it's there for me. That's what I'm really trying to encourage you about, is that your inner habitat is actually there for you, waiting for you to open it up, waiting for you to learn how to trust yourself and your intuition and your imagination, right? Because the unconscious is always going to serve something up for you. The most recent one even started showing up about 3 years ago, and it wasn't really a habitat, it was a being that showed up at all of mine. And I call him Shadow Man. So wherever I would be in the visualization, he would be there. So finally, and he's 8 feet. He's not little, and well, maybe he's 7.5 feet, and he's got really broad shoulders, and there's no eyes and nose or whatever. I mean, he's just like a big shadow, but he's got, structure, right? One of the days, he was standing next to me, and I looked at him and I was like, oh, there's definitely volume and substance to his form. So I don't know what possessed me to do this, but I just crawled inside of him. I don't know. It just seemed like at this stage of the game, I got to figure out what's in there. And it was dark. It was as if time stood still, as if no one could find me. And you know what? I felt safe. Really safe. And this is a theme in my life. And I have to say, every single year, I understand just a little bit more about how important feeling safe is to me. So I think it's no surprise that he appeared at a time when I was really ready to understand how important it is. So I stayed in him for a while, and then I got out. So he would appear if I was running along with my Black Panther up to the hills of the desert, if I was walking along this marsh that had kind of a little bit of squishy, spongy water in it on this big old farm, or I was riding the waves on a boat after following a river and finding myself at sea. Shadow Man was there. So you can see I have lots of things that show up in my visualizations. I allow myself to go places and allow my intuition to take me there. But, he never talks to me. Do you think that's weird? I don't know. He never does, because he doesn't have a mouth and eyes, and I just hear the messages. But I do have to say that the time spent with him has helped me. Besides what I was just sharing, it was quiet in there. There was nothing to do. I could just be and feel myself and feel safe and feel like time stopped. And it came at a time when I was having trouble doing that. I was feeling all this pressure to get stuff done all the time. And it gave me this baseline, this place where I understood, oh, that's what it feels like to feel safe. Really safe. Because inside of my lifetime, I don't know what it actually feels like to feel safe, because I have layer upon layer that has had it feel anxious or unsettled or insecure. It's like reminding me that there is a place where I just am. Yeah, super, super helpful, super powerful. So I said if I had time, I would go back and tell you about my grandmother's rock. The place where the cave was off to the left, originally it was just all dirt when you looked over this rise of the hill. And so, over time, what happened is that I had like little flowers sprouting up, and there was the first thing that made itself there it was kind of a windy walkway down the side, like tiered or terraced levels of flowers. And there was this giant quartz pink rock. And I just knew right away, I called it my grandmother's rock. And of course, my grandmother did rocks, which you've heard on a number of my shows. But it was right there, like it was being placed as a foundational pillar of this garden space. And my grandmother loved to garden, and I actually felt like I was her slave labor in the garden when I was little. And so there is this grandmother's rock. And for a long time in my visualizations, all that was there was really the rock before some of the little flowers came. So anyway, there was this one moment where I was over in that area, and I had gotten connected to a guide in one of my visualizations, and she had a name. I called her Ogalama. And the next thing I know, I'm standing next to this dirt area, and she starts pushing me into the ground. And I hear her saying, "You've got to get to the bones. You've got to get to the bones." And I'm like, "What are you doing?" Right? Because I'm kind of dissolving in this visualization, and I'm feeling my experience of being in my bones, right? In my tibula and in my femur and right? Anyway, it was the most incredible, it's probably one of the most visceral visualizations I ever went through, but boy, was it powerful, because it beckoned in a whole decade of work that was done at a super, super deep level. And of course, I found out later that in terms of spirituality, that the idea of getting to the bones is really an there's important symbolism, to that. And as the visualization went on over the years, where I got to the bones became an entire crop of amazing overgrown sunflowers. And so they're still there. And I can't even tell you that I loved sunflowers, but they do show up in my personal habitat of that mountain area with the cave and the cabin and the copse of trees. So I hope that in this conversation that you are hearing the powerful, important, profound impact that creative visualization can have on your life. I hope you are getting a little bit of a glimpse into how you might construct your own visualization. I also would like to open up your idea about it not just being sitting in private in a quiet space, but all of that manifestation and the vision boards and the thinking about how you can utilize that center space, right? That center territory to put yourself on the growing edge and really risk wanting things, really risk the idea that you want to create something. So thank you for listening. I would like to share with you some quotes from Thich Nhat Hanh, and I'll do it until I run out of time here. So here's this first one. It's from Discovering the Magic of the Present Moment. Oh, it's from You Are Here, that work that he did. So here it is. What is love? Love is treating your heart with a great deal of tenderness, with understanding, love, and compassion. If you cannot treat your own heart this way, how can you treat your partner with understanding and love? All right, the next one. Mindfulness is the miracle which can call back in a flash our dispersed mind and restore it to wholeness so that we can live each minute of life. And that's from The Miracle of Mindfulness. And this next one is from Peace is Every Step. You can see everything in the universe in one tangerine. When you peel it and smell it, it's wonderful. You can take your time eating a tangerine and be very happy. All right, here's the next one. This is from Peace is Every Step. We are very good at preparing to live, but not very good at living. We know how to sacrifice 10 years for a diploma, and we are willing to work very hard to get a job, a car, a house, and so on. But we have difficulty remembering that we are alive in the present moment, the only moment there is for us to be alive. I think creative visualization really helps that idea, right? Bringing us to that moment. So the next one is from the Miracle of Mindfulness also. Breath is the bridge which connects life to consciousness, which unites your body to your thoughts. And whenever your mind becomes scattered, use your breath as the means to take hold of your mind again. Thank you so much for being with me. I hope that you will go create a creative visualization or hunt one up on the internet and enjoy.